The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
I just finished reading the novel Deacon King Kong by James McBride. According to its author, it's a book about church. But before you rush out and get a copy, know that there's plenty of language in it that we try not to use at church. But McBride's dedication reads, "For God's people, all of them." And it is. The title character, who actually has several names, is a deacon in a black church in the projects of Brooklyn. The year is 1969. King Kong is the name of a very potent homemade hooch that the deacon is very fond of. Very fond of. The deacon is generally called Sport Coat by most everybody, thanks to his usual attire of a garish one, plaid. And one of the themes running through the book is that no one knows exactly what it is that a deacon does. He did get an invitation to preach one Sunday and had already decided to title his sermon, "Don't Eat the Dressing Before Confessing." But what Sport Coat mostly seems to do is drink that hooch and have conversations with his dead wife, Hetty, about his failings in life, and his living friends about the baseball team he coached, and work his many small jobs in the community. It's actually the part about the baseball team that fuels the opening action of the novel. Sport Coat's star player, Deems, has gotten caught up in the drug trade. He quit playing ball just as he was about to go to college and instead became the neighborhood dealer. Sport Coat can't let it go. He needs to get to Deems and to make him see the light, that he's wasting his talent, that he's wasting his life. He's made the wrong decision. He has to give up hawking heroin and get back into baseball, which will save his life. Sport Coat is so passionate about saving Deems that he finally goes out one morning and shoots him. This happened on the first page, so I'm not giving anything away. Deems doesn't die, probably wasn't meant to, and Sport Coat keeps after him, sometimes just doing stuff like saving him from drowning, and sometimes roughing him up with some harsh words. Sport Coat's friends beg him to give it up, just run away, now that he is wanted by both the drug kingpins and the police, to save himself and forget about Deems, who probably is beyond redemption anyway. Besides, the longer that Sport Coat keeps hanging around them, the more their own lives will be endangered. But Sport Coat waves them off, slips away, and doggedly keeps doing what he does. Believe it or not, this is a comic novel. I would say it's also a book about Jesus. It's a book about persistence and redemption and how the world views success versus what real integrity looks like. It's about community, how community binds us together and protects us in the face of a hostile world, but also how community can get corrupted. It's about how messy life is and how beautiful. It's about love, both tough and tender. And it's a book that pointedly explores the question, what will it profit a man to gain the whole world but forfeit his life? Sort of like the Bible. In today's gospel, when Jesus tells the disciples about suffering and rejection and death, he is not saying that he just came here to die. He came to live among humans, to show us how to live. And he came for our redemption. He came to save us. But he knew and he wanted his followers to know that living the way of Jesus, the way of healing, of lifting up the lowly, of peacemaking, of alleviating suffering, and upending social order, and erasing conventions that give privilege to some while oppressing others. Living that way was going to be met with powerful, even violent opposition. He wanted them to understand that he would stop at nothing, not even his own death, to reconcile people to each other and to God, to release people from the things that were stunting them, that were imprisoning them, that were killing them. He would stop at nothing. And there would be opposition, even violent opposition, to that kind of life. The disciples were shocked. They'd been hanging around with Jesus long enough to see him attracting these large crowds, to see the crowds worshiping him, to see his miracles, and to hear his strange but life-giving teaching. They were riding the wave of his success at this point. He was a superstar. And they were going to share in his glory. So once they proclaimed him the Messiah, the chosen one, the one who would bring in the kingdom, they were going down a very different path than the one Jesus was going down. They were imagining Jesus overthrowing the government and putting them in charge. Jesus was imagining dismantling the forces of oppression and restoring the outcast and the broken, and knowing that the powers that be would not tolerate that. And so he had to correct them. If they wanted to follow him, they too would become objects of powerful opposition. They too would be risking their lives. They needed to know what the cost of following him was going to be. When Jesus calls Peter Satan, rebuking him for trying to thwart Jesus' mission, for trying to impose his own ideas and his own mission that were based on the world's values, it's a little bit like when Sport Coat goes off and shoots Deems in the ear. He needed to get his attention. He'd done a lot of teaching and been hands-on in his instruction, but when the worldly powers took hold and the corruption was setting in, then it was time for a strong rebuke. Am I talking about Sport Coat or Jesus? Yes. So this is the message. Following Jesus is more than just declaring that he is the Messiah. It's not about the title, but about the mission, Jesus' mission. And Jesus' mission is subversive. It will result in rejection and ultimately death. But Jesus also knew that his death would not be the last word, as we will see again for ourselves this Easter. Jesus knew that God would redeem him, just as Abraham knew that God would make good on God's promises. And so he could stand fast in his integrity and live out his countercultural mission to give people, all of them, true life. And so can we. These are big words: integrity, opposition, redemption, opposition, oppression, countercultural, salvation, subversive, dismantling. And this is a big question. What does it profit us to gain the world if it means we lose our lives? As we continue to walk toward the cross and resurrection this Lent, may Jesus break through the noise of the world to get our attention and to make these more than just words.